We light our flaming chalice each week with a simple spark to make holy our time together. With this flame, may our highest intentions be refreshed, and with this flame, may we remember who we are and whose we are. With this flame, may our faith be renewed and reignited to guide our journey. Amen, and may it be so.
Good morning, and welcome. Welcome to this place of exploration and deepening, this place where we nourish our spirits and feed our souls, this place of community, spirit, and service, where just our very presence is enough. This place which does not separate us from the world, but gives us opportunities to strengthen and expand our hearts so that we may face this world fully. Welcome to those of you joining us virtually and those here in-house. Welcome to those who may be watching or listening later. This space is created by each and every single one of us, the unfolding of our hearts and the gathering of our minds. With this new month comes a new theme, which guides our worship, learning, and deepening here at River Road. Faith, like so many other spiritual and religious concepts, does take some unpacking, especially for us in UU spaces. While the concept of faith might be influenced by belief or conviction, this month we will explore and dig past that surface to what the core of our faith is, whether that be a shared faith or our personal understandings. Throughout this month of March, we'll explore together what a renewed faith might mean in our lives. In that spirit, come, let us worship together.
Hello, I'm Beth Iagakura, Director of Religious Education, and this is Laura Piervincenzi, our Family Minister Coordinator. Today's prophetic voice is the Reverend James Luther Adams, a Unitarian minister who lived in the 20th century. Reverend Adams knew the Bible story from the Old Testament about David and Goliath. How UUs could use it to deepen their faith. In the story, David and Goliath is a warrior with the Philistines who picks a fight with David, who is a young Israelite. Even though the Israelites wanted to give David armor and weapons to use in the fight, the story goes that David instead chose to defend himself only with his slingshot and 5 smooth stones. Goliath laughed at both of them, but in the end, David defeated Goliath. When reflecting on the story, James Luther Adams thought, what are the 5 things we need in modern life to overcome difficult times? He came up with the 5 smooth stones of liberal religion.
The first stone represents learning. We are always learning. Our faith is a living tradition. That means that as we learn more, we do better. For example, when we learn how to better respect a person or a whole culture, we change our actions to reflect that learning.
The second stone represents togetherness. Being together matters. Our friendships matter. James Luther Adams wrote that we should be in friendships and relationships that we choose to be in. For example, we gather here today because we want to and because we enjoy each other's company.
The third stone represents love. We listen deeply to each other. How we behave together matters. How we are together in our relationships matters. How we are in our congregation matters. We spread love in all of our relationships. For example, when we learn about an injustice in the world, we do what we can to change it, motivated by love for our fellow humans.
The fourth stone represents doing good. Doing good in the world is important. We can wish it all we want, but it's up to us to do something to make it happen. For example, it's good to talk about feeding the hungry, but it wouldn't happen unless we actually collect the food and bring it to the hungry people.
And the fifth stone represents hope. We humans cannot accomplish what the first four stones represent if we do not have hope. That doesn't mean that we won't have times when we're not hopeful. It means that we honor the times when we are feeling hopeless while also looking for glimmers of hope. For example, we may feel hopeless when we think of a big problem like hunger, but then we catch a glimmer of hope when we see people contribute to a food drive.
So which of the 5 smooth stones would you like to try to work on this week? Which one would you like to keep in mind? Why did you choose it? They're all good choices.
So now we invite the children to stay seated for just a little while longer to enjoy the choir performance, and after that, you will go to your classes. Thank you.
We are connected and interdependent in this great web of existence, and when we gather together in this space, it extends beyond these four walls, and we do commit to this shared journey. This morning, we light a single candle for the piece of us that is connected to the whole, to the larger, and to the eternal. That piece of us that hurts and mourns and waits with bated breath as we watch the unfolding of tyranny on the very real lives of everyday people. That piece of us that stomps in frustration and disbelief that the actions and the decisions of a few can impact the lives of millions across a continent. That piece of us that yearns for a world not controlled by greed and self-interest, but that works for all of us. In this space this morning, when we gather together, we come to extend that piece of our hearts, to extend that piece of our hearts to one another in our sorrows and in our joys, and to extend that piece of our hearts throughout this globe, which is undoubtedly hurting and in so much pain. I invite you now to sink in and settle into where you are in this space. In this time to perhaps close your eyes or lower your gaze for this time of presence and of prayer, this time of meditation and deepening. And we call in the presence of the Spirit of life, that presence that roots us and yet connects us to all that is around us. In such a broken world, it's hard to know what impact we could have, what our words can mean, how far our voices can travel. And in the midst of it all, and it swirls and it grows, we can feel lost, we can feel fragile, we can feel hopeless. But that Spirit of life connects us to it all. We don't come to this space to escape, but to make space for it all in our hearts and in our lives and in this world. Spirit of life, we ask for a blanket of protection over our hearts and over the lives of so many, searching for a new version of home, for a new version of connection and togetherness, whose lives have been completely disrupted, and who are searching. May we rise to face this in this time as a shared people with a shared faith. May we do the sacred work of bearing witness even while we figure out what is next for each and every one of us. May we be guided by our faith, the sunshine that goes everywhere. May we gather our hearts and our spirits in these times of uncertainty, being certain that we belong to one another, that we are citizens of this world, that our borders can be soft with one another, and that we can extend our hands to this world that is in so much need. May we settle into that knowing this morning. May we extend that knowing to one another. May we soothe our hearts and show up for this world together. May it be so. Blessed be.
There is something so sacred, so normal about a Sunday morning. When we come together for the very first or the 400th time to hear songs that are brand new to us or songs that are written in our very hearts, there is something so sacred and so normal about coming together to do things that draw us to an ancient past and connect us to an unknown future. Everything we do in community, from the songs we sing to the stories we tell, they're intended to connect us certainly more deeply to each other, but also to our own individual, deeper sense of calling and purpose. And when one reads the e-weekly and sees the announcements and ponders the programs, all of it is an invitation to ask what you are called to do now and how you are called to connect. In that spirit, we lift up the deep connections that we have long-standing over generations with our partner churches in Transylvania and Romania. You may know that our partner churches in Romania are separated only by a national border and connected by the vast stretch of the Carpathian Mountains with Ukraine and with families that are connected over both sides of the border. Our partners in Transylvania right now are raising funds so that those escaping Ukraine can find safety in Romania, even though they themselves are far from the border, and they are raising those funds with incredibly limited resources and invite us to find ways to do the same with the resources that are at our disposal. And so I invite you, please, to read the e-weekly this coming Thursday, where you can find out not only about denominationally sponsored programs for giving, but programs inspired and blessed by our partners right there in the region who are digging deep to do every single thing they can so that life and security and safety might be possible for more and more. We know that every time we gather, we are staking our claim for connection in the midst of a world so increasingly alienated. And so I invite you to stake your claim for connection, for the very biggest events here at River Road that connect us more deeply to laughter and love and community. If you have not yet, mark your calendars for April 23rd and 24th at Seneca Creek State Park right here in Montgomery County. We will gather again for the River Road Retreat. There will be games. There will be shared food. We can eat together outdoors at the retreat again. There will be generational connection. It will be joy, and there will be worship and drumming and maybe even dancing. We hope you'll join us that Earth Day weekend to center down and to connect. And please do also mark your calendars for the momentous return of that force of nature, the River Road Bazaar, which will be back June 4th. Thank you. For everyone who has been squirreling away boxes full of things for 2 years to share at this bazaar, and for all of you who may consider volunteering, it is because we make it so, and we know it will be a success, not just because of the bottom line it generates, but mostly because of the connections we recreate. We also gather again for Shelter Week, an annual tradition here at River Road, where we provide all the food and support for the Montgomery County Women's and Children's Shelter. From March 28th to April 1st, we will be a lifeline for our neighbors, and we need you now to sign up for food, support, drop off of those supplies. Let us be the change we always talk about in the world, and this is one easy way to get a hold of that power and make a difference right now. And if you are new or feeling new and find yourself called to count yourself as one among this merry band of oddballs and do-gooders and fellow travelers along a wayward spiritual road, we welcome you to membership right here at River Road. Our membership book signing will be Sunday, March 13th. All you have to do is contact us, me, Reverend Nancy, or our Connections team. There'll be a sign up in the e-weekly. Every single one of us makes this place something new, and all are truly, truly welcome. Indeed, we create this place by our generosity of many kinds. generosity of time and talent and treasure, and we gather here in the middle of the stewardship season, not to ask each other to give out of guilt or obligation, but because giving until it feels good is an expression of our values. We kicked off our stewardship campaign last week, and I want to emphasize that the time to give is now, not later, not put it off a couple weeks, but now, so that all the people who give their time to help design our programming, support our staffing for everything to come, those folks, including me and your staff team, can keep at it and design everything you hope to receive and create next year. So please, if you have not given yet, I hope that you will. And our lead steward this week is someone I'm so honored to introduce, someone many of you will know. Charlotte Jones-Carroll is a leader in social justice and in spiritual growth in this place in so many ways. Among them, the fact that she has given hundreds of hours of her time, her generosity, and her expertise to welcome and sustain refugees and asylum seekers in this country who are safe and alive, in no small part not because of this congregation as an institution, but because of you as human beings, and her as a leader who helped make it so.
Gosh, thanks, Nancy. So I'm Charlotte Jones-Carroll. My husband Tom and I signed the membership book here in spring of 1990. That's 32 years ago. So our roots run deep. We've never missed supporting the congregation financially any year since then, and I'd like to share why. Tom and I were married at All Souls Unitarian in 1980 when we lived in DuPont Circle. Back then, we were busy with work and travel and babies, and we never got involved in All Souls. But in 1989, we moved up the avenue to Chevy Chase Circle, and we began looking for a Sunday school for our daughter. For a long time, my husband Tom felt called to the Unitarian faith because its practices, in his words, reflect humanitarian and spiritual values without requiring belief in a particular dogma. As a secular Jewish immigrant from Hungary, Tom knew how important humanitarian values are. I'd grown up with parents from different Protestant faiths and got involved in the Interfaith Council when I went to college here at American U. And then my work life took me all around the world, and I got a much expanded understanding of different religions, Islam, Catholicism, Buddhism. These experiences led us to appreciate how much UUism welcomes those with different religious backgrounds. So that's why Unitarians, but why River Road in particular? Again, it was Tom who convinced me. He convinced me to try this church within months of moving to Maryland. I think he'd come for some memorial services here, and he's always loved this space. We both have grown to love the spiritual sense you get sitting here listening to sermons and to the wonderful music. And I was just happy actually back then that we quickly found a spot in Sunday school for our daughter, even though it was April and the church year was ending. So we came here for intellectual, aesthetic, and program reasons, but we stayed because, as some of you know, as Nancy hinted, I'm a joiner. I first got involved in RE as a teacher, a lay leader, and a coming-of-age mentor. And I chaperoned this was very fun. I chaperoned teen trips to Boston, El Salvador, and to demonstrations downtown. Later, I joined the board, then leadership and nominations. I got active in the Central American Task Force and the Social Justice Council and the Immigrant and Refugee Task Force. After I retired, I became, for a decade or so, lay chaplain for UUs at American University, and I joined some women's groups. So as you can see, River Road kind of became my base of operations. Our lives are deeply interconnected with you, members of this congregation, and we're enriched immeasurably by this connection. So for me and for Tom, sustaining River Road's presence in our lives is a no-brainer. We give what we can, knowing that it'll be well used to sustain and nourish this extraordinary congregation. Being part of a loving, encouraging community is a gift we want others to experience. So like Joe Saliunas said last week, we are grateful to those who came before us to get River Road started, and we thank all the rest of you who join us in keeping it running. Thank you.
We hope you will consider making your pledge today. Even right now, you could do it on your phone. Right there on the website, there's a big green button that says Pledge Now. And as you consider also making your gifts this Sunday morning, as always, you can text to give 73256, the number that will be on the screen, and the amount that you'd like to give this Sunday morning. And know that your generosity is a part of a larger story that includes us all and so many far beyond our doors. Like many of you, like me on a good day, the author Lauren Graeber is a spiritual person. She's a churchy person, even, of the Episcopal variety. She is a parent, a mom, to be exact, living in these wild times, and a person of faith, wondering if she'll ever come back to church. Really. After 2 years that changed something very close to everything, wondering what it even means to come back, wondering what it would take to get up and do it all again on Sunday morning like we used to do in the before times. Lauren reflected recently in her words on those few times when we have brushed our kids' hair and dug out the nice pants and hauled ourselves off to church. She found that what her family heard there didn't have a whole lot to say about the reality of their ever-changing, ever-coping experience. In her words, the ancient liturgies had not been amended to accommodate these times. There were still formal and respectable words of belief in a fixed story, and I was too tired and too messy inside to find myself within them. So instead, I went home and returned to the Instagram posts that somehow hold intentional space for me in this weird, weird world. I made warm bread in my kitchen and handed it to my children with a blessing, and we ate that on a Sunday morning rather than the old communion wafers. We are not okay, she says, but we are finding our way. And it might be, if you asked, that we could find our way back to a changed church. It might be, she says, that those of us who are too tired and messy inside to pretend like everything remains unchanged, it might be that we could find our way back into community, but not if this thing we know as congregational life, not if it can't meet our changed souls with some spirit of its own deep changes. It might be, she says, all of us messy, searching, transformed and yearning ones could find our way back to all sorts of traditions that hold us and ground us and guide us, if in fact those traditions have something to say about what it's like to live in this time of constant adaptation. Right now, at this dawn of springtime, we gather on the cusp of massive and welcome and beautiful transformation in the natural world, and we gather on the anniversary of the moment everything changed. 2 years since the very first panicked phone calls, and the very first time that we wondered at the bus stop, which was still running, about how we would manage for a single week, then 2 weeks, then 2 months, then 2 years. And it is interesting, on the month of this anniversary, since everything changed, 2 years since the world shut down and changes took root along with the spring that felt to me like the world might forget it ever happened. 2 years since that day, we kick off a new theme for our services at River Road here in March. Renewing faith is the theme that we set for ourselves last August, and that made a whole lot of sense last August, but that, let me be honest, is something of a challenge today. And last week, when your staff team sat down to reflect on this theme and generate all our great new ideas, we acknowledged that there are so many things it is difficult or impossible to keep faith with these days. I wonder, not just in this time of anniversary, not even just in this time of war, I wonder, in light of everything that we face together and everything that you face alone in the sanctuary of your heart, I wonder what faith you are struggling to maintain or renew just about now. Faith in human nature, perhaps. That driving can-do spirit of human potential that has guided so many of us for so long. Faith in governments and processes and systems. Faith that the resistance in whatever form is not in fact futile, and that all the tyrannies, large and small, will not prevail upon this earth. Faith that you will be okay. Faith that you are enough. Faith that you've got this thing, whatever this thing before you is. And faith that the kids are going to be all right. It strikes me that when keeping faith is so challenging, When the things we struggle to keep faith with are so foundational, our central spiritual task is not about renewing a faith we used to have, or reclaiming a sense of self or of optimism we used to carry. Instead, the central spiritual task is a complete reimagining of faith and what it is we are willing to attach it to. One tool for reimagining our faithfulness, for asking once again what it is we want to attach our faithfulness to, one tool for that endeavor is, in fact, a congregation, just like this one. And this particular faith community of Unitarian Universalism, which stretches, in fact, far back into history, especially the history of Eastern Europe, so torn apart by hate and division right now, this faith of Unitarian Universalism is full of people who can remind us what it is we might return to in these ever-changing days, even when all the old forms of religion we thought we might have faith in are crumbling, even when every tradition that presents itself as unchanged is dubious in its relevance, given just how messy we are inside. In Unitarian Universalist history, Francis David is remembered as one of the truly late great prophets of our tradition. The Hungarian Transylvanian theologian who fought for religious freedom when religious freedom wasn't cool. And he was, in fact, actually convicted and sentenced to straight-up prison in 1577 for the crime of religious innovation. Francis David, he had a bit of a journey, like so many of us, into what would become his Unitarian faith. He moved during his life from Calvinism to Lutheranism, from Catholicism to Lutheranism to Calvinism, and then eventually into something that the world would come to know as Unitarianism. He was, as I like to say of so many of us, a holy hodgepodge. We have been a few places, and we are not done with our journeys yet. Francis David, all the way back in 1577, he was mocked for this wayward religious path that took him so many places and so many identities. People somehow thought that this fact that his faith was ever-changing was an indicator that it was not real. And when he was so mocked by fellow theologians before kings and powers and empires, Francis David declared back without missing a beat in perfect Latin, Semper Reformanda, which is to say, always reforming. The Reformed Church, he said, is the reforming church. The changed soul is the changing soul. The one who is convicted with a determined new way is also convicted to the new way that will unfold itself in the future. The whole heart of this whole thing, right down to the core of this religious tradition of ours, it is not a single doctrine or belief system in which we are told to have faith. It is instead a commitment to the changed and changing power of faith in our lives. As our sibling tradition in the United Church of Christ likes to put it, God is still speaking. God speaketh, not spoke. God did not declare a thing and close a book which we are to interpret and extrapolate for a changing age, but in fact the holy, however you know it, however you fight against it, however you reject it, the holy as you experience it is still speaking, not then but now, in the movements of our own lives and choices. The story of faith, it wasn't told back then, it is told now. So if God is still speaking and the story of faith is still being told, the task is not to reclaim anything at all, but to interpret, to pay attention, to respond. And this, I think, is why I am a Unitarian Universalist at the heart of it, truly. Because when I change, not if I change, but when I change what I believe, even who I am, when what breaks my heart changes and how I respond changes and what gives me hope changes, I do not have to leave. I am a part of a tradition that holds the constancy of change at the heart of the whole thing in a weird way. If you want to be the most traditional, old-school Unitarian Universalist that ever existed, change is the most constant commitment you can make. Ours is a progressive religious tradition. And I sometimes only maybe half-jokingly say that I am a really bad Unitarian Universalist. Because my ultimate commitment is not to Unitarian Universalism, trademark, brand name, this thing that you can call a denomination. My ultimate commitment is not even to this place, this River Road, this congregation that we love, although I love us. My ultimate commitment as a minister is to the progressive religious impulse in the world and the claim that impulse stakes on us as we continue to be reformed day after day. Ours is a progressive religious tradition, progressive not in the current political sense, but in the original, much deeper and commanding sense. Progressive religion, by definition, puts its faith in what the holy is doing right now, what the holy has yet to do with us in the future. As my colleague Tom Owen-Toll has put it, when we allow faith to be progressive, every hour holds some deepening claim, some corrective slant, some impossible surprise. We are not limited by past mistakes or current prejudices. We are born over and over, not just once or twice, and then we die. We are renewable creations. We are renewable creations. And if that is at the heart of progressive religion, a faith we can renew in these days, then it bears saying, though it might be awkward, that by contrast, conservative religion does just that. It conserves. It protects. It holds what has been as precious, and it preserves it over the span of time. In this way, progressive religion puts its faith in the forming edge. Conservative religion puts its faith toward a sacred past. And so a renewing faith in a conservative context is about touching base again with what is holy enough to be conserved. But renewing faith in our progressive context is about lifting up a blessing toward every change that is underway in your heart and in our community and in the world. Human progress never rolls on the wheels of inevitability, said Dr. King in his letter from the Birmingham jail. It comes through the tireless efforts and persistent work of people who are willing to be co-workers with the creation. And that, maybe, is the kind of faith I can renew right now. A belief that all of us can be co-workers with the creation. Even though all that was has receded behind us, creation goes on, and we are agents within it. And perhaps we can come back as changed people to the places where we make meaning. Come back messy and weary and hopeful and proud. Come back not to a place dedicated to conservation of what it has been, but a changed reality that fuels what we can be. Perhaps we can come back here after 2 years to a changed congregation. The full Latin phrase that Francis David so casually tossed over his shoulder, what he referenced many hundreds of years ago as people mocked him for his changing faith, the full phrase says, Ecclesia Reformada et Semper Reformanda, which is to say, the church reformed is ever in need of reforming. And today, on the dawn of spring, as the ancient and unreformed drums of war beat on, the good news is that renewing your faith might just mean letting it change. That maybe, just maybe, you never lost faith in the first place. Faith in all the things, in human nature, in yourself, in each other. Maybe you have found the freedom to let it evolve. I bless you in your changes. In the sure knowledge that even in the midst of the messiness, holy things are still happening, that the changed ones are ever changing, the reformed congregation is ever reforming, and something both ancient and ever new is just waiting to be revealed from within you. Gratitude is maybe the very easiest of spiritual practices, and I want to lift up gratitude to everybody who made today's service possible. Of course, our whole tech crew up there. We've got both Leonards and Jeff. We're so grateful for the team, and we hold in our hearts also Danny, who couldn't be with us today because his father passed away on Friday. When we need each other, we show up for each other. I'm also grateful for Jennifer signing like the incredible embodied pro that you are on that song, Spirit of Life, that is sacred to us. And our entire music program, Shual and Clif and the choir. We bring heart and soul, along with the people who reach out to you in your homes or wherever you are via our live stream. It is a blessing to be together. And so as we prepare to take this flame that we have kindled out into the waiting world, may the truth that makes us free, the love that casts out fear, and the hope that never dies guide us and those we love and those we do not love forward together till the day spring breaks and all the shadows flee away. Amen.